So this last week, I spent a few days in the Midwest in St. Louis, and for this symposium for pastors of schools who are part of this renewal of Catholic education that's going on in Catholic liberal education. These are priests from all over the United States, and we were gathered together to be trained more in the vision and sharing with each other. And I got to be on a panel of 3 priests for the whole group to share what we're doing here at Christ the King. But I tell you, when I got off the plane in St. Louis, it was 1 degree. And let me assure you, there's a difference between 32 and 1. I got back here, it was like 35. I thought I got to put some shorts on or something. It was, but it was a great time, notwithstanding the fact that I looked around this group of priests and pastors, and I was like, I think the second or the third oldest one there. Like, how did that happen? But it's really neat to see these other priests just vibrantly involved in their schools. Most of them are K through 8, some are K through 12, that are around in different parts of the country, all part of this renewal. And when I came back and I was thinking about this homily, we're kicking off Catholic Schools Week, I was struck by this passage from the book of Nehemiah. We don't get to hear from Nehemiah very much in the lectionary. But he's talking about the reading of the Torah in a very significant moment in the people of Israel. Now we just need to know a little bit of context here. This is the Babylonian exile. 597, the Babylonians come, conquer Israel, haul a bunch of them back to Babylon, and come back 10 years later and do some more of that and destroy the city and the temple. And they took the people of Israel there. Why? Because of the infidelity, the sin of the people of Israel, right? They had broken the covenant, and the whole point of being able to live on the land that God gave them was to be faithful to the covenant and to be involved in the right worship and the temple worship and living the 10 Commandments. And so this was a shattering experience for the people of Israel, right? I think that the whole thing was over. It wasn't over, because God is always faithful to his promises. But they get hauled off to Babylon, and they're not really enslaved. It's not like they were like in Egypt with Pharaoh. But they're invited just to work and live and intermarry and just be like everyone else. And you can imagine being in this new place, new language, new people, new customs, new gods, that there was this constant invitation, temptation to forget about your heritage, forget about the covenant, forget about your religion. Just be like everyone else. That's the best way to succeed and prosper. Well, and then what happened? The Persians came, and they overtook the Babylonian Empire into their own empire, and Cyrus, who in the history books called the King of Kings, because it was the greatest empire of its time that the world had ever seen up to that point. He said, all right, the Jews, you can go home. And in fact, not only can you go home, I'm going to write a decree of that, and I'm going to give you some help. Go back, build the Jerusalem up again, build the temple, worship God the way you want to, and off you go. But not everybody went back to the promised land. Some stayed there. Some settled into the pagan society and culture and just assimilated. But the brave ones that came back returned to the land that God gave them to take up again the covenant. The temple's rebuilt, Jerusalem's rebuilt, and now we have Ezra the scribe and the priest. He brings out the Torah, the law of Moses, and what does he do? He starts reading it to everybody that's assembled. And he reads, what does he say, from early morning to midday? That's like 6 or 7 hours. And what are the people doing? They're weeping. It's like it's the rediscovery of their story that had not been destroyed by the exile. A rediscovery of who God is, who they are, what the world means, what is their purpose in the world. They're hearing it again, and it's a liberation. right? It's overwhelming. And that's why Nehemiah Ezra, he's not there wagging his finger and talking about the bad things that happened that got him exiled and all of that. He's not focused there. He's focused on the now. And that he says to go rejoice, feast, right? That God is faithful to his covenant. Don't be sad, don't weep. We're not hand-wringing over the past. A new day is beginning. And again, what's happening? They are rediscovering who they are, the meaning, the purpose of their lives as the chosen people, and most importantly, who God is and that he is always faithful, and that even in the exile, he was faithful and was guiding them to this new chapter. Well, when I think about the history of Catholic education, it's a long story, it's a big story, but in many ways, the church in our educational institutions we've suffered our own sort of Babylonian exile. You know, there's many reasons for that. We don't have to go into it. But just like the basic thing is that in the cultural revolution of the 60s and 70s, especially the sexual revolution, Catholic education at every level started to intentionally strive to be like everyone else. And for various reasons, for secular prestige, for influence, for government funding. And there's one moment in particular, it's called the Land O'Lakes document that came out in the 60s, which was an explicit effort to detach Catholic education from the teaching authority of the church and the oversight of her shepherds. It started at the university level, but over the decades it's gone down and trickled down into all the levels of education. And the end result is what happened, is that our Catholic education started to look and act like everyone else. Now, of course, there are good teachers in every system. And there's good teaching that happens with those good teachers. And I went through the public system, and I had some phenomenal teachers. But something changed, right? And even that our schools became more secular and worldly, even if there were uniforms and crucifixes on the wall, but something in the vision had changed. A different vision, a different philosophy. And the result of all this, we've all experienced it. I mean, throughout my years as a priest, I've run into hundreds, even thousands of people who say the same thing. I grew up and went to Catholic school, and now I've left the church and the practice of the faith. I've talked to hundreds of people who put their kids through Catholic elementary school, Catholic high school, even Catholic university, and now their kids don't practice the faith at all. Their grandkids are not baptized. And you think to ourselves, is like, well, what happened? What's different? All those years we weren't able to help a student realize that God is real. So that's the exile. But what about the good news, which is happening now, which is great? We can talk about the return, because right now Archbishop Sample is embarking upon a renewal of Catholic education throughout the Archdiocese with a new office for the mission of Catholic education, and Christ the King, we're part of that renewal to help him in that. And our school does not follow or worldly or secular vision. We follow what's called Catholic liberal education. Liberal meaning free. That's the deepest meaning of the word. Of a mind that is set free by what is true and good and beautiful. What it is, it's taken over the last 2,000 years, the church has taken the best knowledge and wisdom of the pagan world and of our Jewish heritage, and through of what Christ has given us, who is the way, the truth, and the life, right? He is there in the synagogue at Nazareth, and now he has said these words are fulfilled, right? He is the Logos, he is the Messiah. And we took all of that, and it produced with our faith the greatest educational vision that the world has ever seen. And the founding principle of our schools and universities, when we're true to our mission, is that all knowledge and truth is taught in relation to the source of all truth, that is God. That through all reality is the Logos, the Son of God, through whom all things were made. All reality was created by him and through him. What does that mean? That means reality has a meaning to it. It has a purpose to it. And this is what's happened with the secular mind, is that our children are told there is no inherent meaning in the world. There's all these facts and information out there, and you have to put a meaning to it. And you notice what happens when we do that is that now reality is not something to wonder about. And we know that wonder is the foundation of knowing, of learning, and of teaching. Right? It's like taking a big wet blanket over wonder and putting it on it. But what we have is, in Catholic liberal education, is that knowledge and life are not fragmented. They're not standalone subjects. They're related to each other, interpenetrating each other, integrated in a very beautiful symphony of knowing, math and music, faith and the scientific method, history, literature, and art, all related to each other because reality is created by the one good God. And this holistic sacramental vision integrated all knowledge into the journey of the blessed life and human flourishing and happiness, which is what? Ultimately following Jesus and the heavenly life in the world to come. And on a practical level, under the excellent leadership of our principal, Mrs. Sarah Tabor, with an incredible group of faithful teachers and staff, which I see here and I see at our masses, we're shaping our parish school according to the mind and heart of Jesus and his church. And the mission of our school is this: to make saints. Because that is the ultimate success of a human person, is to become holy and to go to heaven. That they'll find their ultimate, perfect, eternal fulfillment in the blessedness of heaven. And we want to form them to be faithful and wise and prepared. And we do this by cooperating with parents. Because as the church teaches, parents are the primary educators of their children. And I think this is where there's some frustration in schools nowadays, is that parents feel like they are sidelined, that they are cut out of their child's education. But we don't do that here. We partner with our parents. We help them in the virtues, helping them to know and love and live the virtues. We help to instill a sense of wonder and awe at the great mystery of reality, which is to be discovered together, that comes to us from a good and loving God. We have an understanding of history and of our story, of the story of humanity, which is first and foremost the story of salvation. And we foster a loving community that nurtures and challenges our kids in this whole holistic and integrated way. And I want to say just a couple things that I'm really starting to see in our school. The first is I see this sense of wonder, that they're excited about learning, and our teachers are more excited about teaching. This rediscovery of wonder then produces joy, the joy of learning. And I'm seeing it in our kids and in the teachers, because this is the way human beings were made to learn and to teach. And you know, the thing to remember is that the kids that are formed in this tradition, they also score very well in math and science and those other things, and they go on to get good jobs. But it's so much more, because getting a good job is not enough to be happy as a human being. It's not our fulfillment, ultimate fulfillment. So here, a couple other examples here are our third graders were working on multiplication and division patterns, seeing those in math. And then they were shown the Fibonacci sequence, that numbering pattern. and to see that how it appears in the natural world, like in starfish. It's an amazing sort of thing that the pattern that we see in math is also the same pattern that we see in the natural world. You start making those connections. And I was interested myself because the same Fibonacci sequence, for those who are musicians and may have heard of the hard rock band Tool, is that they use the Fibonacci sequence in their songwriting. It's like all this happening from this pattern that we see over and over again. We have 3 7th graders this year who are converting to the Catholic faith and bringing their parents into that deeper relationship with the Lord and with us. Our lower grades have pen pals with our elderly and homebound parishioners. So often when you're homebound, you feel isolated from everyone else and lonely, and they're writing to them. And our homebound people, they're writing back. And I went and visited one of them a couple weeks ago, and she gave me this statue of Our Lady. And she said, Monsignor, I want you to have this. I want you to give it to the 4th grade. This was my mother's statue. Because the 4th grade had been writing to her, and she wanted to give that to them. And so now it's in their classroom, and when they pray, to see those connections and that community with which this whole vision is creating is beautiful. And so I'm really excited about what's going on in our school. And I know that there's other schools in the Archdiocese that are starting to respond to this renewal as well. And I invite all of our parish families, visitors, people you may know, come check us out. We have open house after this Mass to see what we're all about. And we work our best with tuition assistance to help it be affordable to whatever economic background that you might have. This awesome enterprise requires sacrifice, and I'm just so impressed too about our faculty and staff and parents and parishioners who don't have school-age kids, but are praying and funding this educational enterprise. And so let's go forward with this great work of our parish school in helping the Archbishop in his call for renewal to make our school a place of a life-changing encounter with Jesus Christ, who is the way and the truth and the life.